bioelectricity effort, namely the Ministry of Environment, and they're in the climate change direction. Then we have with us Jose Luis Chiriboga Cordobes from the Ministry of Electricity in Ecuador. We're having with us Marina Solanas, again from Sustentar, who was very active in past discussions and helped us a great deal to sort of fine-tune the effort. I hope you have joined us by now, Marina. Then we have with us Mario Peixoto Neto from Brazil, from Laplace Finanças, a consultant who is advising the Energy Ministry in Brazil. And we should have with us by now, I'm reading up the list of those who have signed in for it, accepted the invitation, and confirmed the participation now. I'm on a different screen than the webinar screen, so I'm hoping you're really all with us, and maybe Phil can take track of it and make sure that everybody's really online when I'm reading here, and I'm not missing anybody. Nicanor Rees from the Jamaica Petroleum Corporation, a project engineer there, very involved in the bioelectricity strategy and policy making. So this is who I have on my list. Is there anybody who I have missed at this point in time? Have I mentioned Anelia Milbrandt from with NREL, who's one of our speakers? I don't think I've missed. I've mentioned her yet. I've missed her, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to introduce you in a moment. I'm just seeing here, Ignacio Figoli is also has also signed in, who has been with us on earlier call. Of course, Ignacio, very warm welcome to you. Ignacio is a forest engineer from the National Directorate Ignacio, thanks for joining us again. So with this, I think we're going to just start and start the webinar. Again, warm welcome to all of you. It's likely that some of us are signing in a bit. Our discussion rounds is going to be a very interactive session, so those of you who have not had a chance to introduce themselves to the group later, we're very excited to hear from you in person in a moment. Sorry that I ran through this list so quickly, but we have a very full program today, and I want to presenters and having a very effective session. So in front of you, what you see is the agenda for the session today. I did the welcome already. Now I'm introducing the agenda, and then what we're going to do next for just 15 to 20 minutes is go through the community of practice strategy again. We have had a fantastic time discussing with you what you want to get out of this initiative. We've done this on the introductory sessions. Many of you have sent us answers to the surveys that we have prepared, but we've also received comments in bilateral conversations through emails from you, and we've taken all of that and we try to really distill from it what's most important to you. And I'm going to run through both the current situation in your countries as you see it, at least. We're having just one or two bullets on every key component that we want to address with the community of practice, and then what you see as the main challenges and what you're hoping the community of practice can help you with. I'm going to run through those ideas and slides and through that distillation of your ideas and requests, but then I'm going to stop and we're going to see whether there's anything that you want to discuss, whether there's anything you want to add to the general CoP community of practice strategy. That's just for some 15-20 minutes at the beginning of this session to make sure that we're all starting up the same basis again, and we're all all agree on what's ahead in this session and the following sessions. And then we have three content modules, two main ones and one where we are then hearing from you and learning about your individual country situations. The first module is a more general approach towards resource assessments, towards the potential of bioelectricity resources. How do you measure it? What are the indicators that can be used to measure your potential? What data needs exist? How do you process it? And how do you then use the results of the technical exercise to have impact on the policy-making process? And I'm very, very delighted to have identified together with our team a wonderful person, I think, to lead this part of today's session, and that's Anelia Milbrandt from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, a huge partner in the Let's GP partnership. And she's going to speak about the Biopower Atlas that they have done and its relevance for decision making. But she's really giving us a relatively broad overview of how to use technical assessments for decision making. So I'm very excited to see her presentation, and we're going to have enough time then to start a discussion. She has, just before we started this session, said she likes interactive sessions a lot more than being the only talking head, and so we're going to make sure that that's the case today, and she has a good time with us. So I'm hoping you can prepare good questions for her. The second module then will be on another 45 minutes, will be a specific case study that we want to dive into together, and it's the Costa Rican bioelectricity resource assessment, as I understand it, as part of the draft of a NORMA. I'm not sure whether more broadly or in this specific area of bioelectricity, but I'm sure we'll all learn how exactly it has been set up. The speaker is Alejandro Roblero from the Center for Sustainable Markets Intelligence, and like the first module, we're going to make sure we have enough time to discuss specific areas that are of interest to you with him after his presentation. And then there's a third module, and as mentioned already before, that third module is going to be about your specific situation. We have asked you to prepare just a few comments regarding your situation so that we understand better where exactly you stand on technology assessments, where you see the main challenges. Some of you have sent us slides. We asked for just 3 slides for 3 specific questions. What exists, what are the challenges, and what next steps do you anticipate? So that's what we're going to discuss in the third and final module of the session today. And yeah, then we're going to have a little bit of time at the very end to wrap up the discussion, and I can walk you then through the logistics for the next upcoming meetings. I'm going to stop here for a second, see whether there are any questions, see whether my co-organizers have any information to share with me as before we move on. Doesn't seem to be the case. We have a few more attendees who signed up, who we're going to introduce as we go along with the Q&As as they speak up or we get to their country situation later on.
Alex, if I could just add a quick note for all the attendees,
you've been with a main organizer of this all. Go ahead, Phil.
Hi everyone. Just a quick note for all the attendees. You've been unmuted on our side, but if you could please mute your own mics on your end while the presentations are ongoing, that would be really helpful. We're leaving the mics unmuted so to promote conversation between the group members, but it's really important that while Anelia and Alejandro are presenting, we have everyone's mics muted. So if you can do so on your end, please do so. And if you can't, then please let me know through the chat bar, and I can mute you on our end. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Phil. Maybe I explained to those of you who haven't been on GoToWebinars that often before. You see on the right-hand side and on the pane there, you see attendees, and under these attendees, you will find your name, and that's where you can mute your microphone. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but that's one way to do it, the one that I'm using. And you also see a category on the right-hand side that's called questions. And this is where I'm asking you to please, as you hear our presentations, as we go through this, you mentioned the questions. You can also speak up later on in the discussion, just as we go along, just by interrupting us. But during the presentations, I would ask you to present the questions that come up in the questions pane, because that allows us to collect some of them and to make the most of our time. But I'm going to make sure that you can also find some time in the Q&A without having submitted questions before, because we want it to be a lively discussion. The questions that you have regarding the presentation, please put them in the questions panel on the right-hand side. Okay, so the next slide, please. I'm jumping into the wrap-up of the service and the consultations that we had with you. What is the general community of practice strategy? And we've organized this really around two main areas that we try to distill from the conversations with you. One is, what's the current situation? Where do you see your country standing, and what are commonalities or major differences between countries that are participating in this community? And then secondly, where do you see the main challenges? What are your main requests for us? In what areas are you trying to make progress? Next slide, please. This is a broad overview of how we have conceptualized this community of practice, and it's very much modeled on world, which is sustainable energy roadmaps. Over and over again, in advising governments at any level, at the regional level, at the state level, at the national level, at the municipality level, we're making good experiences with this overview of main areas in which you need to produce information, gather information, and which decision making really in the energy sector takes place. So this was from the outset sort of the idea of how we're going to make the big issue of bioelectricity strategy and policy making more digestible in a way sort of deconstructed in smaller pieces in which we can get our work done, to then in the end bring it all together again. And what we've done here is we've taken our sustainable energy roadmap chart that provides an overview of those main components of smart energy policy, and we've basically added the sessions and the dates in which we want to assess those individual components in this specific bioelectricity community of practice. So if I can ask you to look at the very top of the visual chart, 12 o'clock, basically, technical assessments. That's the content of today's session, of course, on bioelectricity resource potentials in member countries. Technical assessments are, of course, of the potentials that you have, are a very important portion of smart policy making. Without understanding what potentials you have, you cannot get to any smart conclusions or concrete action items. If you look at the bottom right-hand side, you see that we usually, in implementing roadmaps, then move to what we call socio-economic analysis, social and economic analysis, looking into the cost of different energy technologies, different energy sources. That's what's called levelized cost of energy here. has a little plus sign behind it, because in our analysis, usually we don't just look at the market as it exists, but we add some social costs and benefits, as well as disadvantages of particular energy pathways in terms of job creation, in terms of health impacts, to our quantitative analysis. So that's what we're going to do on September 1st in session 2, when we talk about costs and benefits. So that's this area, the second area. The third one, if you look at the bottom left-hand side, September 21st, we're going to talk about policy, administration, financing. Huge area. It's the longest session that we have. It's probably more than enough to discuss in this session to make it 2. But we don't have the 2 sessions, and since this is still at a rather general level, and we're then moving on to the workshop on September 29th that allows us to work with your concrete country situation, even look into policies and drafts of texts, bring experts together with you, help you to facilitate a discussion amongst you where best to go in your very concrete cases. I think we'll be able to make this a fruitful session and not to overwhelm ourselves. But that session is going to be looking both into the investment environment for bioelectricity, what risks are usually there, what de-risking strategies have been successful in your countries or in other countries, and then how do you use policy and administration, so the whole area of governance, to improve the investment environment. So that's what this third virtual session is about, before we then move to the in-person workshop. So this general CoP strategy, I think, has found some great resonance with you. We've received very positive feedback on it overall. As you remember from the introductory sessions, we went through the individual sessions, got you back your feedback, and that was very positive on the approach. And thanks again for having us to fine-tune it further to design the individual sessions. Next slide, please. So very briefly now, looking at the individual sessions and what your input, the input that we gathered from you, from your feedback through different channels has been. And we try to really limit it to a few points each. So in terms of technology and resource assessments, we see from the information we received from you that in terms of the current situation, most NDCs that have been brought forward as part of the Paris Agreement at least briefly mention the idea of further integrating biomass into energy, into the country's energy portfolio. So most, if not all, of the countries represented in this community of practice do aim at achieving more employment of biomass resource, and then making it an important component of the future energy portfolio. What exactly that means, at what size we're thinking, what concrete technology solutions, that's of course differs greatly from country to country, but all countries represented here have brought forward national and international documents that show their willingness to advance biomass resources. Secondly, all countries that are involved in the community of practice have emphasized that they need a further assessment of bioelectricity resource potentials to make smart decisions on the policy and finance side of it. That's really what brings us together, of course, in this community of practice, and that's what we're hoping to make some first progress today. We have seen that there are different levels, of course, of current knowledge and capacity between the countries. We have very large, very small countries. We have countries that have a long tradition already of using biomass resources, like Brazil, for example. We have others that are relatively new to looking into it. That's a certain challenge, but that's also a wonderful advantage of this community of practice, because learning from one another, of course, can only take place if there is a difference, and some countries are a little bit ahead in certain areas to others, and can help them by just explaining the lessons learned they've had. In terms of main requests for this first session that we're right into today, and for this general component, our participants, our members, were very clear that they don't want to only focus on agricultural residues, as was early on in the design of this community of practice the idea, but they also want to look into other feedstocks, such as water waste treatment plants, forestry. The question came up repeatedly in the surveys and the conversations to talk about this, the request to talk about what establishes sustainable forestry. And so we are not going to limit it to agricultural residues, but look into other feedstocks as well. However, we were asked to distinguish between the different technologies as we look into the broader issue of bioelectricity, and also to distinguish between auto-generation, look into distributed generation, large-scale applications versus small scale. So we want to keep it all on the table, but you've asked us to really distinguish and work with you on seeing how to sort of look into the most attractive technologies rather than treating them all as one. Learning how to accurately assess bioelectricity potential is a priority for all countries represented. So in those who received the surveys and from the conversations that we've had, you all repeatedly mentioned that this technology session is important to you, though most of you don't work on the technology side, but rather on the policy and financing side. I very much agree with you that we need to have some mutual understanding here to then move forward to address the next components that I've outlined before. So there is a priority to learn about data sources and indicators that are important for the resource analysis. So that's the first session today, where you see your country standing and what you've asked us to do. Next slide, please. Going to run through these other components now and then make a brief break and see whether there's any questions you have or recommendations, and then we move forward to the first module and to Anelia. So this session 2 is going to be about energy pathways, alternative pathways. How do you measure their benefits, their disadvantages where they occur, both, of course, environmentally, but mostly socially and economically. The current situation that we see in our member countries is that most countries already have some biomass capacity. Not all of them, but most of them have some biomass capacity already. All countries have at least one installed, ongoing, or at least planned biomass energy. So those who don't yet have biomass capacities are currently planning some. So that's the starting situation here in terms of embarking on specific energy pathways, but it's very open how that fits the overall bill. It's very open what social and economic impacts those existing or planned projects have, and how this can become part of a broader initiative, a broader development pathway that then makes sure that it achieves the best possible outcome, and it prevents mistakes that were made. So this second session we've seen was a very, very important component to our members. Of course, because you want to embark on a bioelectricity pathway not just for its own sake, but for certain good social and economic reasons, and so we need to discuss what the most attractive pathways are in this session. So, following, of course, the current situation, as an outcome of it, we've received the main request here to learn how to assess and communicate, not just to assess, but also to communicate social and economic benefits of bioelectricity, particularly then if prices in the current market as it exists seem to be higher for bioelectricity than, say, for fossil fuels or other renewables. So if that is the case, what are arguments to still invest in bioelectricity? So that's one key request, and I'm sure there's other facets attached to this that we're gonna touch on. But this was seen as the main request that we've received for you in this area of social and economic model. Next slide, please. Now, with this third area, I've mentioned already before that policy and finance is all quite a bit. So I didn't want to crowd this one slide too much, so I distinguished between three individual parts of this. So the first one will be on financing. And here, the situation is that all countries are hoping to attract a large investment for renewable energy projects. And many countries already in their strategy or in their policy documents single out the role of biomass as part of this. So all countries are not just aiming at generally investing thoughts into future bioelectricity generation, but they have it already as part of the policy document that they're trying to attract investments. And then, of course, the question is, how do you do this? So all countries present here are interested in improving their investment environment, and that's being done through certain de-risking measures that have been proven in other places. So I think we have a lot of experience to share there with one another for how to attract public and private, and domestic and international support. So this financing area is a very key one. The main request here is, of course, to discuss how to ensure sufficient financing. And then there's a long list, of course, of questions to this. And we've made financing part of the policy session because, of course, you as policymakers have the ability to improve the investment environment. And then this should be done through first an investment risk analysis, and from the assessment of existing financial risks, we can then move on to de-riskers. How do you address these existing risks? Or in the past, if you don't want to use the word risk, you can talk about barriers and enablers and policies and administrative procedures and other measures are, of course, enablers that bring down the investment risk for funders from all these different origins, public and private and domestic and international. How do you design working business models in your domestic market? What financial products are necessary? I'm thinking particularly about working with banks here on loan products, on credit lines that work for bioelectricity. What knowledge do we have there? What example can be followed? What has been working in other places? How do you access international funding, say through the Green Climate Fund, through bilateral support for NDC implementation, through NAMAs? So that's another important issue here. And then maybe a little, or very, very specific, and probably something that we're going to mostly then move to the workshop is, how do you design a biomass energy investment prospectus? So the question of an investment prospectus, how does it need to look like to be attractive to funders? What do I do with it then? So what are the components? How does it have to look like? How do I design it? But what do I do with it then? Who can I approach? Who can help me approach those developers and investors is a key question, and will be a key part of our conversation as it comes to financing. Next slide, please. I have only two more here. Part 2 of the session 3 are then concrete policies and measures. Here the situation is that a majority of countries already use at least one form of tax incentive for biomass, and we've put some examples up here. Colombia, there are some income tax exemptions for 15 years already. Uruguay has a net income tax exemption. Brazil, for many, many years, is using already a transmission distribution tariff. And El Salvador, as a fourth example, has a tax exemption for profits made from emission certificates. Please don't ask me questions relating to those. We have participants from these countries who can explain their situation much better in the third module today. We just wanted to give, mention a few examples here of that we're not starting from ground zero. There's something to work with already, and there's experiences that can be shared. There's probably a lot to learn from that, and in many cases we'll talk about improvement of existing policies rather than brand new ones, I would think. Auctions and feed-in tariffs are in our member countries enforced for other renewable energies, but not so often for biomass. I'm excited to hear from experiences countries have made from looking into them or even really implementing feed-in tariffs and auctions in the bioelectricity area. But that's much less. These market instruments are much less prominent for bioelectricity than for other renewable resources. Most of the current policies are being done through tax exemptions. The main requests that we have seen are two. One, our members request assistance on integrating policies and measures into countries' existing legal frameworks. So often it's individual policies or measures or strategy documents, but the question is, how do you integrate them into the broader existing legal framework? How do you mainstream that with other policies, energy policies, but even broader than that, development, economic, financial policies, to make them more effective and use efficiency and make sure that you're getting the most out of it, and make sure that your overall legal framework is really comprehensive in supporting electricity generation and consumption to the best way possible. Secondly, there's an interest in discussing alternative concrete policy instruments to those that are there. What can be added to what already exists? So not just how you include it in the framework, how do you improve what's there, but also what are additional instruments that could help to effectively facilitate the introduction of both small and large-scale projects. And we'll likely see that there's different policies targeting different sizes of projects. Next slide, please. Going a little bit long here. This is my final slide. So the third area in the policy and finance session is going to be about governance and administration. From working with many countries on sustainable energy strategies, I've really learned that this area is one that doesn't get enough attention, and I'm very happy to see that the group seems to share this view with me, and that you have brought forward requests for concrete action or analysis first, but aiming at concrete action in your countries in this specific area. I've worked in a number of countries where there is clearly a political willingness to move forward and embark on a new, more sustainable energy pathway, where policies are there, but even if these policies are well designed, the implementation of them has often been a problem, and that's where it all then gets stuck. And the former two areas, the general targets and the willingness, as well as the policies, don't lead you anywhere if you are not able to administer this smartly. And so you've brought forward the situation that this is in some cases a problem. You've told us, all countries have mentioned that there is an agency, a ministry, some governmental body that is dedicated to bioelectricity, but very few countries have agencies dedicated specifically to it, so this in itself might already create a problem. And that's also the case for using climate tools, climate governance to support biomass. Most countries do not currently have a law where they could receive international support for bioelectricity and that's often itself a result of not having the human and the financial capacities within the country of writing norms and moving them forward and trying to get them supported and implemented. So the main request here is three. One, creating effective cooperation between different ministries and agencies, what we call mainstreaming, bringing the whole government behind sustainable energy, and here specifically a bioelectricity policy. Secondly, streamlining the permitting process. That's what I already mentioned before. You can have fantastic political instruments, but if the permitting process consists of some 15 or 20 individual steps that you as a project developer have to run through, and if that takes you 5 years to do so, or is entirely transparent and you have zero guarantee that you're ever going to get a thumbs up or thumbs down, or when you get it, then this is becoming a very risky and very costly situation, of course, and that's something that's very often a risk so great that potential developers or funders are not investing in bioelectricity. So streamlining this permitting process, for example, through creating a one-stop window where you have an agency that private domestic and private international and also public investors can come to, where the government in a way takes developers and investors by the hand and walks them through the bureaucratic process, through the permitting process, which is necessary, of course. We can't just, you know, the components of the permitting process are extremely important. So this is not about abolishing it, it is about making it more effective. So the government can play an active role in helping project developers to get their projects permitted, or make the alterations to them that then get them permitted in the second check. So that's sort of the summary of this. Next slide, please. I think that's just quickly mentioning here the in-person workshop again, which is currently scheduled for September 29th. You're going to get the date again on the final slide when we wrap up today's session. So this in-person workshop then has the main goal of governments working together and working with some of the leading experts who will be there in person in Panama on the 29th of September to work on the concrete challenges that you see. Anything touching on anything that we haven't been able to touch on in the virtual sessions before, and even to the point to work on your concrete strategy and policy drafts. So those of you who can attend can bring information with them, can bring the documents with them. Hopefully you have shared them with us already beforehand through the Dropbox folder that we have shared with all of you, so that experts can present, can prepare themselves before attending the session. But then we're going to be in the room for at least a day, possibly even a day and a half. Final agenda is still being created. But to really sit down with you and look at what you have and help you move it forward. So that's the idea of the in-person workshop there. We just wanted to put it on here as part of the broad picture here. And many of you have already told us of their great interest to come and to work with us there. And if you could jump back very quickly to the general overview of the sort of the visualization, there it was, of the CoP strategy. I'm going to leave it here for just a second and see whether there's anybody who has specific questions. I don't see any in the question pane, but you can just unmute your microphone, introduce yourself, and say whether there's anything that you don't find on as part of what I've just presented, and that's very important to you. I really want us to spend a few more minutes with this before we dive into today's session. But can stop you for a second, see is there anybody who wants to comment on this, who has anything to share with the group? It doesn't seem to be the case, so there will be enough time for discussion later on, so bring your suggestions, of course, into the discussion later on. All right, we're gonna now dive into today's topic, into resource assessments for bioelectricity, looking into the indicators that are needed, or that can be employed rather, the data that are the data that is needed for these assessments, how you process it, and then how do you the data itself, and then how do you use it for policy making. And we have a fantastic presenter today. Next slide, please. Here you see a picture of her because we unfortunately cannot be with her in person. We'll see. Hopefully, we can bring her into the workshop in Panama, but that hasn't been discussed yet. For the moment, we have her with us here virtually today. Really very happy that she could make time to prepare for the session and present her work to us. Anelia Milbrandt is a Senior Energy Resources Analyst with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or most commonly referred to NREL, in Colorado in the United States. She has more than 13 years of expertise on biomass assessments. She is an expert on geospatial modeling, also integrating resource infrastructure and market analysis. So we're not trying to make this overly technical here today, but really then see what the relevance for market analysis and policy making, and she's a fantastic expert on that. Anelia will present the Biopower Atlas, which is a biomass resource assessment tool that covers many areas that are necessary here, including capacity potential, looking to existing policies and incentives in a given region. But we've really asked her to present even more broader than that, and using the tool to come to the key questions that I've outlined before. The atlas that she's going to present has been around already for 10 years, and it's used very extensively by policymakers, industry developers, consultants, and utilities, so by a broad group of clients. So Anelia, welcome to today's session, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Alex. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me well. It is a pleasure to participate in the discussion today. Let me see. Philip, are you going to make me? Thank you. So sorry, bear with me for a second just to start the presentation. Here we go. Can everybody see that well? I hope so. I will begin the presentation with a list of biomass resources that in the field we consider sustainable, just to give us a context for our discussion today. After all, we do plan to talk about resource assessment, so again, I just wanted to sort of put us all together in the same page and sort of address the type of resources we're actually going to assess. Generally speaking, the sustainable biomass resources are discarded material that have little or no market value or use. And here we consider crop residues such as harvesting and processing residues, woody biomass that are left on the field, in some cases burned, such as logging residue and other removals after forestry operations, mill residues and urban wood such as municipal solid waste, woody discards, Also, dedicated energy crops. Here we consider herbaceous and woody non-edible biomass resources. They also intermediates, namely biogas and wet waste such as manure, landfill gas, wastewater treatment sludge, food waste, and of course fats, oils, and greases, predominantly yellow grease and inedible animal fats. Some considerations when we talk about biomass resource assessments. The purpose of a biomass resource assessment and the required level of detail mainly dictate the type and the data needs of the assessment. By purpose, we mean to identify resource potential within a given area for a particular end use. Today we talk about electricity or power generation, but we also have transportation fuels production. We also have bioproducts. And the different type of feedstock that they use for this type of assessment. So again, the purpose of our assessment generally dictates the type of resource assessment and the methods data needs. The level of detail also varies between the type of resource assessment. Naturally, the high-level, very aggregated information are usually used by policymakers, whereas for when we need more detailed information at the district or site-specific analysis, and this is the type of information that the industry developers need to make their strategic decisions on site. Sorry, for some reason it's not moving. There we go. Generally speaking, there are three types of biomass resource assessments: theoretical, technical, and economic. Theoretical is practically the maximum biomass resource that you can generate or collect in a given area. It is based on calculation of and measurements of the net primary productivity of the biome. Technical resource assessment is a subset of the theoretical, where we usually apply a number of technical, economic, social, and environmental constraints, such as terrain limitations, land use, and environmental considerations. And the economic biomass resource assessment is a subset of the technical, where we limit the resource potential by incorporating cost information, namely harvest, logistics, such as transportation, processing, collection costs, labor, and things of that nature. And the final outcome of this type of assessment is usually a supply curve, either at the edge of the crop field or forest edge, or the delivered product. In our case today, again, we talk about electricity, so that would be megawatt hours. And in cases where we estimate biofuels production, we either generate supply curves in terms of gallons and liters and units of that nature. There are many methods and tools that we use to assess biomass resources. I will go through that in the next 2 slides. One of the methods that we use, it's surveys. Data is collected on site. We conduct questionnaires. We have face-to-face or phone interviews. We sometimes apply sampling techniques where the results of the given area are further extrapolated over a larger area, and we use that to develop equations to predict biomass availability at that particular site. They are extremely valuable in specific site evaluations, but they're not practical for broad-scale inventory, such as national assessments, even state and provinces. They're often used to validate our model-derived estimates, just to do a little bit of ground truthing, if you will, or reality check. So again, they're very, very important and usually go hand in hand with some of the other methods and tools that we use to assess resources. As you can imagine, it's a very time-consuming, labor-intensive procedure, very costly, of course, even with today's GPS systems. Modeling, we do apply many different types of models in resource assessment, linear, dynamic, or geospatial, to integrate many different factors and inputs to assess resource availability. The complexity of the model and the modeling technique depends on the data available and the need of the assessments. We do have some very complex crop production models that simulate plant development. And there are also some more simplified spreadsheets that manipulate just statistical information. For example, we do a quick calculation of the crop using the crop to residue ratio to assess the crop residue, or we apply per capita generation to population numbers. Continuing on, the remote sensing and geographic information system, these two technologies sort of go, again, hand in hand together as they feed into each other's capabilities. Remote sensing provides invaluable information on land use and land cover patterns through satellite imagery and aerial photography. It is very useful in measuring and monitoring the biomass density and productivity. It is not very useful in quantifying the resources just through the satellite imagery, although there have been some techniques in the literature. So we are getting there, but generally we do pair the satellite imagery with some statistical information to get better quantification of the resources. The geographic information system is extensively used in resource assessments. It integrates, it's a very powerful tool as it can integrate many different types of inputs from the surveys that I mentioned earlier, inputs from different models. It can be itself a model. It can incorporate remote sensing data to illustrate the patterns and relationships and do many types of different analysis. It is very useful in quantifying the resources, again, because you can incorporate land use patterns from the remote sensing. It also incorporates statistical data, so you can do all sorts of screening and site location analysis. The map on the bottom right-hand side illustrates again how GIS can handle different type of data. The map, the little map on the left in that image shows data here for Colorado on crop residues, and this is purely statistical information on crop production for the calculated crop residue by county in the state. And then as we apply remote sensing data on land use, we actually sort of process the data further to show within this county where the resources are coming from. So it gives us a better understanding this large county, these bigger areas, where exactly within that area we should focus our efforts on if we're to build a facility. So again, a very powerful technology, extensively used. And of course, maps are very easily digestible, much better than tables and graphics. So it has been, again, a widely used tool. In terms of data needs, I alluded to that earlier. The chosen biomass resource assessment methods determine the type of data needs for the assessment. Again, we do use statistical data such as crop production, animal count, if we're to assess the biogas production potential, forest land productivity and type. And this is, again, just an example. Depending on the resource assessment, there's so many other inputs and data we need. We do use population data, I mentioned earlier, namely to estimate the waste generation potential, satellite imagery and geospatial data such as administrative boundaries, land use, land cover, soil, weather data such as precipitation, transportation network, existing infrastructure such as transmission lines or pipelines and things of that nature. I would like to point out here that tabular data with any geographic coordinates, latitude and longitude, could be easily converted into geospatial formats, so that's not a concern if, again, the data that you have is not in a geospatial format. It's pretty much any location on Earth and any type of statistical information attached to it, it could be converted to geospatial data. And of course, economic data, if your goal is to conduct an economic biomass resource assessment, we do use information on the cost of the feedstock production, and that includes labor and handling, harvesting, and things of that nature, some logistical costs such as transportation and storage. So again, there's a lot of consideration once you sort of have a better understanding of the type of resource assessment that you would need. This is an example of the biomass resource assessment that was completed here for the US. I won't go through the full list. I fear we are running a little late on schedule. But the map on the top illustrates the solid biomass resources in the country by county, and the map on the bottom is the same type of information, but it just shows the biomass density in terms of biomass potential per square kilometer. We do provide this two type of products because it speaks differently to people. For some folks, the raw data, which is the top map, is a better sort of presentation for their purposes. And some folks would like to just again see the density. As you can see, crop residue, which happens in the sort of the U.S. Corn Belt and along the Mississippi River. It's really our most prominent solid waste resource at the moment. Again, we do consider agricultural residue, woody biomass, municipal discards, predominantly methane emissions from various sources. And then we do have some energy crop case studies. They're not shown on these maps in terms of conservation reserve program lands, abandoned mine lands, and brownfields. I do have the link in the bottom if you're interested to learn more about this type of assessments. Please feel free to go and explore. In terms of lessons learned, as we've been conducting this type of analysis over the years, I did not show any international. We do have actually a lot of international work as well, but I'm looking forward to hear from all of you today where you're at and how you've conducted this type of analysis. Networking is always important. We all learn from each other. So again, very exciting to hear about that. One of the most important lessons learned for us is that an analysis is as good as the data. Very good, very detailed data would naturally lead to a very credible analysis. And on the other hand, data with uncertainty would be obviously not a very robust analysis, which should be noted in the results. Naturally, we need to ensure that the necessary data is available, or at least have some plan on how to acquire it as the project sort of goes forward. Depending on data availability, plans may change, namely the level of detail. Again, you really may want to do a resource assessment at the county or province level, but if the data is not there to support it, then again, you have to be flexible. And that applies to my third point, that you need to have a backup plan. Again, this is what we've learned over time. We start with big plans for a given area, and then we stumble into sort of a data unavailability or access constraint and things of that nature. So there's a lot of dynamic in that area. The resource assessment also, as important as it is as a first step, should not be viewed in isolation. That's another lesson learned that we have, because resource availability alone does not guarantee viability of a given technology. The resources need to be looked as a component of a system, and that is why we apply extensively an integrated analysis that gives us a much more comprehensive sort of picture of the potential. And I will talk about that in a second. In terms of how the resource assessments are used, in my view, one of the most important use is to support decision making, and predominantly supporting the industry developers and policymakers. For industry developers, this is really the first step in development and scale up of their bioenergy projects, because the biomass resources vary so much. The siting of the plants really requires knowledge of their characteristics. How much is available, is there competition, and again, the quantity that is available in that area. For policymakers, again, better information leads to better decisions. Understanding better the resource potential helps them understand what they can do to support the industry development, what incentives, tax breaks, and other measures can be implemented to really bring the industry forward. It also helps them support research and development activities. If they know that there is an abundance of a given resource in an area, they sort of put effort in promoting that technology. And that goes to the next point, which is generally it helps them organize, sort of promoting that technology, organize stakeholder gatherings, and sort of support networking and communication. How are the results used to support decision making? We do build tools that allow decision makers to do many different types of scenario analysis, sensitivity analysis, and to assess the feasibility of a given technology, and also to develop realistic expectations for energy potential. For example, in a given area, you might have heard that there's just abundance of a given resource, but once you actually start doing the resource assessment, you look at competition, looking at existing infrastructure, you may quickly find out that, oh, well, the resource assessment really estimated a lot, but look what's happening actually on the ground. We don't have as much as initially thought. So again, back to my point that the resource assessment alone, very important, critical component, but it should also, the next step should be to view it in a sort of relation to existing infrastructure and market and socioeconomic and environmental considerations. With that in mind, I will demo and sort of illustrate how this integrated analysis, if you will, how these resource assessments are used further to support decision making. Bear with me for a second as I sort of change the screen. I hope the internet connection is good and sort of the demo goes smoothly. So we developed a so-called Bioenergy Atlas. This is a sort of a suite of two atlases, biofuels and biopower. For again, we do have different clients. Some industries are interested in biofuels development, biopower. As you know, different feedstock goes to different technologies, and again, different infrastructure and market considerations and even policy need to play. But these two tools are very easy, interactive applications where users can view the resource estimates. They can look at infrastructure, again, competition. They can look at some existing policy. They can conduct some analysis to give them information on the biopower and biofuels, respectively, potential in their area. So I'm going to demo the Biopower Atlas. Again, I hope internet is good. Not as fast as anticipated. I should be connected. We do have some backup slides in case, again, they is just too slow. I fear going through the webinar perhaps is slowing down my connection.
Don't worry, Anelia, we're going to have some opportunities to make up time, so don't rush through it too much.
Thank you.
It's very
well,
exciting.
I do have. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. I do have again slides in case again it well, there it shows up. It runs really quickly earlier, but as you know, that's it always happens. Murphy's Law.
We're patient for getting something that's probably more exciting than screenshots. So let's give it some time. It would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So here we have the tool begins with the woody biomass, but again, you can turn layers on and off. We do have many different types of feedstock. We have the crop residues, including harvesting crop residue, which is the residues that are left on the field after harvesting. We do have processing crop residue, which is those residues that remain in the processing plants after the crop's been for the process. In the case of the U.S., we have bagasse facilities down in the south. We do have woody biomass resources, so I'm going to turn those off. The forestry residues that I just showed out to you. Primary mill residues. We have urban wood, which is predominantly utility tree trimmings, construction and demolition wood. This category includes municipal solid waste wood as well. And secondary mill residues is woodworking shops and things of that nature. You can click on this little question mark here, and it gives you more information about the data, what we call metadata. It explains what this data includes. It also tells you what the data source is, if it's not sort of processed by us here, and what is the time difference. People generally want to know how old the data is. You can also click on that little arrow, and you can download the data in different formats. in a CSV that you can use in Excel spreadsheet. You can also download several geospatial files if you have your own GIS system and you would like to explore the data further for your own analysis. You can also click on the Legend tab, and you can see all the different colors and what they represent, the units of measure. And you can also adjust the transparency. If you do plan to have several different layers, the transparency works really well. So you can sort of work with that. And I will show you the query button in a second. I just wanted to go first over the different layers. We also have the biomethane layers, namely methane emissions from landfills, from animal manure. We have also methane emissions from industrial, institutional, and commercial organic waste, which is predominantly food waste. We have also residential food waste estimates, which has not been plugged into the system yet. And we also have methane potential from wastewater treatment plants. I'm sorry, the tool is extremely slow. We also have information from the so-called billion ton study, which is an economic analysis. They provide data by, it's from our, it's a analysis done by our sister DOE lab, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and they provide economic analysis for all these type of feedstock. For purposes of our tool, we include it only at $60 per ton, but on the website, I'll just click one here. We point our users to go to that particular location, and you can download other type of economic data if you want to see the potential at $40 and $80 and so forth. So it's available. We also have energy crop yield for energy, cane, miscanthus, poplar, and some of the other feedstock that they considered in the U.S. Again, you can click on that button, and you can read what, again, what the time reference is and who provided the data. So we host data from other institutions if they're interested in sort of a more outreach to our tool, which we've been doing that. And again, of course, we have the resource assessment data. It's predominantly from here. Something that it's been very used in our atlas is the competition. So we have the bioenergy plants. So you can see the biodiesel plants in the country with different sort of, in the legend, you can see with different size of those dots, they represent the capacity of those plants. We also have ethanol plants, and we also have the so-called integrated biorefineries, which is something that the Department of Energy has been investing tremendously over the last 10, 15 years. These are biorefineries that they produce not only fuels, they produce power, and they produce bioproducts on site. So they're capable of maximizing the feedstock to the point that there's no leftover material at all. Everything is used in that refinery. So it's pretty exciting concept. As you can see, we have several, some of them actually sponsored by the Department of Energy. So it's very exciting. In terms of biopower, we have landfill gas locations. We have municipal solid waste, those that they actually burn the wood waste predominantly. We have some separate wood and wood waste that use logging residue. Other waste biomass. We have coal-firing biomass facility. As you can see, some of the coal power plants in the country burn biomass to offset some of the emissions. And of course, we have pellet plants in the country as well. All of these, again, facilities are very important as you overlay your feedstock. Again, and you would like to see, for example, oh, in this particular location, I do have great resource, but if you put some of your pellet plants there and some of your wood waste or some of the other locations that they already use, you may quickly find out that a lot of the material that actually is shown, it's perhaps already being used by others. I won't go through that in more detail. We have some natural gas information. Again, this is just as a reference. Some folks like to use that. Other power plants, renewables and conventional. We do have something, again, I would like to point out to you from an environmental standpoint. We do have the so-called EPA non-attainment areas, and these are areas in the country. I'll just, let me just think of maybe carbon monoxide or something. there are different types. We can nitrogen dioxide and so forth. So these are areas that EPA designate as not meeting the environmental standards for a given pollutant. And why is this important here? It is because, again, if an industry developer sees a potential in those areas, they might have actually a really good chance of developing a project there as an opportunity to lower the emissions in that area. So this is just sort of, again, one of the considerations for industry developers as they make decisions. Again, we have this data for them to sort of support, again, moving the technology forward. So this is the EPA non-attainment areas. We also have the greenhouse gas emissions from stationary sources. This is methane. I'll turn on the CO2. Again, in similar fashion, we just want to equip policy and general decision makers or industry developers with a better understanding of where biomass can really make a difference in terms of air quality. So again, this particular data set is extensively used by our consultants and utilities. And we do have some extra infrastructure and boundaries. We do have counties, if folks would like to look at that. For policymakers, we have a congressional district. If a congressman would like to see what their potential is, they can actually, I will show in a moment, they can actually do a lot of analysis within their district. We have federal lands, again, for opportunities for development, American Indian Reservation states, and so forth. A particular analytical tool that has been, again, extensively used, especially by state policymakers, is what we call the state query. So you can just click on the menu. You can choose whichever state you want. I'll choose Colorado since I'm here today. Let's see, it's a little slow, but it looks like it's working wonderful. So the tool masks everything else because, again, it sounds like you are interested in that particular state. And the tool generates information for you in terms of conventional energy. You have information on the conventional generation capacity, number of plants, retail price, how much it's actually been consumed and produced. Then it gives you information on the renewable energy, the biopower generation capacity, that is for current, not potential, the capacity of those current biomass plants, and the number. We have only 4 in Colorado. And then also it gives you information about, just again, FYI, of all the wind, solar, geothermal capacity and generation and number of plants as well. As you can see, we have a lot of solar, actually predominantly solar in our state. So, and this is the exciting part in terms of the biopower. So the tool actually generates information on the tons per year for your state for every single feedstock that they just went through, including biogas. It also estimates the potential biopower capacity in terms of megawatts and generation in megawatt hours. You can, it's unfortunately covered by the panel for the webinar. Right behind this area, right here, you can actually download the data in Excel spreadsheet, and you can again further sort of use this data to do your own analysis. If you'd like to look at the data sources, you click on that tab right here, and it just tells you everything you need to know about the data, where it comes from, what is the time reference. Again, most of them are pretty current, as current as we could have them. We update those tools pretty regularly. So again, this is a really, really exciting, sorry, I'm just trying to run quickly here to show you something else. This particular, again, capability for the state query has been really, really used. You can also do a point query. You can put anywhere a point on a map, and it just tells you what's happening there. You can also do a region. You can draw a box. And again, it generates information for you in terms of the 1,000 tons for the particular residue. So if you have several residues, it's just going to create different tabs for you, and you can see how much you have. Now, the most used part of the tool is that I'm about to show you. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. It is very, very slow. This is what we call biopower analysis. Again, it is used extensively, especially by consultants. These are folks who are hired by utilities sometimes. All the utilities use it directly by industry developers to help them understand what the potential is. So you click anywhere on the map and you draw a radius of interest. I will draw a radius, as you can see the pointer, it tells you how many miles are you at. So I'm going to draw a radius of about 50 miles. This is the general rule of thumb for biomass, that you would like to keep your transportation cost low. And as you can see, the tool automatically generates information for you in terms of the generation and capacity potential for every single feedstock. If you know your technology very well, you can go and say, well, actually, I think in this particular area, I can get a lot more than that, and you can type in a number. You can also change, you can say, well, maybe the energy content, actually, I can probably get at 7,000 because you understand your particular area much better than, again, we look at the resources at the national level. You can change the obtainable. You believe that you can actually get 60% of that residue, not 50. Again, we have some of those default values just to help novice users, users who are not familiar with the technology. But again, folks who are very well informed and very well versed with this technology, they do this all the time. They conduct many different scenarios, and again, it's really used for that purposes. Again, the tool recalculates everything for you. And then another last thing I would like to show you is our incentives function, where again, I can zoom out, just fear that it's going to go slow, but it looks like it's working. Right now I'm in Utah. Again, you can put a point anywhere in the country, and the tool brings information about all the incentives available. It starts with the state incentive. It could be tax inception. It could be net metering. It could be, again, other tax breaks at the state level, and then it goes to the federal level for some credits and sort of cost recovery systems and things of that nature. So this is all available at many different levels for every single location in the country. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention. I'll be happy to take any questions. I hope it wasn't too fast. We just have some limited time, but thank you all.
Thank you very much, Anelia. This was really exciting, and thanks for not giving up on the slow internet. I think it was a lot more exciting to really see you use the model. This is, right, I think, built on Google Maps. Maybe you said that before, but it really looks like this. I would like to, Anelia mentioned already that we're running a little bit late on schedule. So what I would like to do to make up for it is maybe limit your questions that you have now to questions that really relate to the presentation. What can you get from the model? What can you not get from the model? Amelia mentioned she's really interested in your country situation, and we have hopefully ample time towards in module 3 of today's meeting to discuss your individual country. So if I could ask you for now, because module 3 is dedicated specifically to that. So if I could ask you to please for now just limit your questions and comments to the use of the model, to the broader situation as it relates to all countries. And you can do so by just unmuting your microphones and speaking up, or if you don't have mic capabilities, please use the pane on the right-hand side and the questions pane to ask some questions. So I think there's somebody's trying to get through already. Is there a question already? Otherwise, I definitely have some that I think are interesting for the group as well. But, are there any questions? Speak up.
Hello?
On the right-hand side. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Marina. Thank you, Anelia, for your wonderful presentation. It was very helpful. I have a question regarding the demand side on this model. I guess this is pretty focused on the supply side, potential of biomass, but I'm wondering if we could use this kind of tool for a more collaborative approach. It means how is that I could find some kind of, I don't know, GNC or methane intense consuming site close to a place with a great potential to produce biomethane? Is there any kind of that information for a more collaborative approach and see if I could develop a biomethane project gathering 3, 4, or 5 social projects in an area with a big potential for production?
This was Marina from Sustenta from Argentina. Please, all of you mention again who you are, because you're not as familiar to the presenters as you are to our members of the community. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Marina. Thank you for the question. If I understood correctly, you would like to see, in terms of collaboration, you mean between countries or within the country and the companies that they are interested in that? Is that the type of collaboration you're talking about? Or, sorry if I'm not clear.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm not sure I was clear enough. I'm just wondering if within the same area where we have great potential for biomethane production, I could also consider intense methane demand sites. It means, like, for example, I have these crops on this area, but nearby I have 5 projects that would be willing to go because they need this and that for this process. I mean, within the same area, not between countries.
Right, within the same area. No, certainly. I mean, again, this is the sort of the purpose of the biomass resource assessment. You do evaluate what sort of resources you have on site, and then you look for opportunities to sort of engage the industry. I'm not sure. I mean, the tool is generally used, again, as I mentioned to you earlier, the run analysis tool. Again, you can build a similar tool to do what, again, we're able to do here. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull everything and talk at the same time. And that generally helps you, again, estimate the biomethane potential. So you can do that as well. And then you can add that to your crop residue if you'd like to do that in the digester. You can add that to the methane from wastewater assessment, you know, and the manure. So you can actually calculate all of them and just get a better idea of the potential in your area. I hope that answers your question. I'm still not entirely sure of what collaboration, but certainly, again, the bottom line is it is possible to estimate those type of resources. So that's what we have done here. We have done this analysis actually prior to going into the tool. And that is where the tool grabs this information from. But we allow people to actually go and edit, as I showed you, if they know a little better, perhaps, their local situation, because it's hard at the national level to really capture the locality. You know, we might miss some resources on site, and that's why, again, consultants or on-site analysis are very valuable. So you get a little better understanding. Marina, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. I'm wondering maybe if I would like to develop a co-digestion project, and I already count on, I don't know, maybe I'm running this wastewater treatment plant where I can see that I have a couple co-digestion feedstock nearby, but I would also like to make sure that this is something feasible to pursue in terms of the economics. So I would also like to know if there's some demand out there for biomethane or my electricity if it's not fitting the rate.
Right.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much. Anelia, I think you've discussed this a little bit with our team. We were looking initially for a tool that really has information already for the region that our members in the community of practice are from, for Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And we really couldn't find any. There are individual resource assessments, as the one that we're going to get presented in a moment from Costa Rica, but there isn't really identified a tool that has done that across the region or for multiple countries in the region. So on a very general level, is this tool, is it adaptable to the member countries? What would it take them to use it? How could this be done?
Very good question. I mean, again, this tool is built off of Google platform. It is again, it uses just the GUI of Google, so it's folks are very familiar with the Google Maps. Certainly can be applied to any part of the world, really, as long as the data is available. As long as countries have conducted resource assessments, they can be easily implemented into that tool. It's not a very big effort, honestly, as long as the data exists. And in my understanding, I did work on a project for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation where we looked at the status and of biomass resource assessments, and I'll be happy to share with the team if that's of interest. We also examine that sort of question of what the effort would be to generate that sort of information for the whole continent. So again, it just depends on where each country is at the moment. If they have conducted a biomass resource assessment, then I think the hard part is done, because in terms of infrastructure and existing facilities in terms of competition, environmental and so forth, this data exists for the whole world in the GIS format, so this will be very easy to sort of add. In my view, the hurdle would be the resource assessment itself, and you have done that already. You're halfway there, really.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Anelia.
But the tool building itself, it's really not a very involved project. It's just again, it's just a matter of having the data.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. If you could turn up your microphone a little bit, at least I personally hear you. Not very loud, very clear, but not very loud. Are there other questions? Questions for Anelia? Please unmute your microphone and speak up. That's not the case. We're going to discuss your individual countries later on, and I'm hoping you can stay with us to the end of today's session to see whether there's questions that you need to either raise yourself and ask.
Thank you, Alex. I would like to encourage everybody, if they have any questions after the session, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to, again, address any questions you may have later on. If you're thinking of sort of building up a similar model or questions about the resource assessment, we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Anelia. In the interest of time, why don't we jump to the next presentation about Costa Rica, and then we use the final module of the session. And I'm sure we're going to come back to you again, Anelia. Thank you again for your wonderful presentation, and for offering our members to contact you after the session. We'll have your contact information on the final slide here, and we can then contact you through email. The second module is a case study. It's a case study of the Costa Rican bioelectricity resource assessment, and we have a very distinguished speaker who is opening our discussion in this segment as well. His name is Alejandro Roblero. He currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Sustainable Market Intelligence in Costa Rica. He has a BA in business, an MA for business administration from Inca Business School. Was a great partner of the World Watch Institute also in the region. So we're very, very delighted to have you with us, Alejandro. Alejandro has worked for many private sector companies as well as international organizations, including the World Bank, IDB, UNDP, and UNEP, and he has advised the Costa Rican government, and that's what he's going to present today. Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I wish you a very, very good morning or afternoon, depending on whether you are now. And it is actually a pleasure for me on behalf of CIMS to develop this presentation, which mostly summarize all of the effort we have been conducting during the last year, more or less, on supporting the Costa Rican Ministry of Environment and Energy, all together with other very relevant governmental agencies, especially the Ministry of Planning and the Costa Rican Electricity Institute and the Costa Rican Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, which altogether have developed this first attempt of what would be a readiness phase for the Costa Rican energy residual biomass NAMA, which is like the form or the policy instrument that the Costa Rican government has selected to undertake all of these programmatic activities to deal with agricultural and animal manure residues in very specific ways. Okay, so we are going to cover a little bit of the policy context in which these NAMA have been developed and for which we use some of the already developed biomass potential studies that were available, and the NAMA components, and the what we say is the business model for this NAMA to a critical mass of private sector individuals into this low emission development policy. And then we are going to try to explain the reduced opportunity principle we brought through some of these NAMA components with the final application of the letters of interest that we managed to get from different financial institutions, both at the regional and local level, and also finishing with some of the challenges for the second readiness phase that we foresee that has to be developed during the next couple of years, and being these challenges focused on the information gaps we already highlighted during this design process. Okay, so for the political and institutional context, I gotta say that Costa Rica has already developed some interagency policy instruments at a different level, and that have managed to be relevant through the last different governments, which is something very positive from the private sector perspective, to see a very coherent institutional environment, since the positive incentives and the enabling environment these instruments enhance. Costa Rica has already developed and ratified a national climate change strategy, which also has an action plan, which are being developed and conducted by the National Climate Change Directorate within MINAI. And more recently, as all of you may know, Costa Rica has also presented and disclosure its INDC, in which the Apollo sector has a really important portion of the ambitious goal that Costa Rica have set through this INDC. Another directorate within MINAE was responsible to develop and update the National Energy Plan, who also prioritize the usage in a very effective way of different sources of biomass, both from agricultural residues or municipal residues. And since we are focusing in a multi-agency developed NAMA, we also gotta highlight the existence and the implementation of this document called Policies for the Agricultural Sector and Development of Rural Areas, which is the main document that sets guidelines for the integration of the agricultural organic waste into the current institutional and private sector landscape in Costa Rican rural areas. Last but not least, in terms of not a policy instrument, but rather a pretty solid and comprehensive program, I would like also to highlight, as part of this context, the biogas program that the Costa Rican Institute of Electricity have been developing through the last 13 years, more or less, which have been a very groundbreaking program in which the ICE have been unilaterally supporting several private sector companies, mostly in the livestock subsector, to develop their own biogas projects, mainly for self-consumption. They have developed more than 40 biogas projects nationwide in different rural areas, which nowadays equals for 5.9 megawatts of installed power. Okay, so given this institutional and policy context, I would like to debrief a little bit of what this NAMA energy residual biomass proposal is up to date, where its main goal is to encourage the use of organic agricultural waste, or RAUs in Spanish, generated in the domestic agricultural sector and agribusiness. And we also said agribusiness, especially with the further link with the exporting sector, which I'm going to explain further later, through different technologies that enable clean energy generation, supporting low emission development and improving final goods access to international markets, as a way to lock in the incentives for those private companies or individuals that undertake the processes, changes, and the investments needed to adapt their energy process to take advantage of mainly their in situ agricultural organic waste. The main institutional stakeholders in the process, as I already mentioned, are the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, the Institute of Electricity, and the Ministry of Environment, with a kind and very important support, both technical and financial, from the Spanish cooperation and the GIZ, more specifically for the technical cooperation and the NAMA design, since the vast experience the Costa Rican-based GAC agency have by supporting the government on the design of the Costa Rican coffee NAMA, which is already in the development phase. As I think already mentioned, this NAMA is already a rather basic proposal with some very well-defined components and very comprehensive business model, but a proposal which still needs an extra readiness phase actually to overcome these informational barriers, which I am going to remark on the last slide of my presentation. Okay, this NAMA has 3 different technical action areas: dry biomass residues, agricultural dry biomass residuals, wet biomass residues, both from different fruits, but also from animal manures, and agro-industrial processes that are linked to these on-field residues, trying to, as I said, to make more of a business case for this private sector to engage and to build up a critical mass of low emission development within these sectors. This NAMA proposal has 5 components. The number 1, and I'm going to debrief all of them in this very specific order in order for you guys to understand the so-called business model of this NAMA, which have been developed or conceptualized to be more private sector or business-like, since the nature of the different value chain engagements that we can oversee within practices and investments. So the first component is to bring in more and deeper technical support to enhance the adoption of good economical practices in agro-livestock farms. This is to generate, more and better organic agricultural waste, which would be the input for the agro-industrial or agribusiness facilities, which are going to be considered for the second component of this NAMA, which is improving the efficiency and increasing productivity in the agro-industry to leverage the use of those agricultural organic wastes energy usage that we already have been propelling with the component 1 activities. Then, of course, we are including the MRV system, which will undertake and consider the impact of the different activities and resources encompassed within the first 2 components, but with a little tweak when compared to a more traditional MRV system, which is trying to lead all these baselines and activities to an eco-label system. And this is, like trying to see these eco-labels as a value as a value aggregator for those private companies and farmers that have undertaken the risk of participating and investing in the 2 previous components. The fourth component is, therefore, the alignment of both private sector and commercial government institutions for the promotion of these eco-labeled products. And when I mention eco-labeled, I am actually referring mainly to product carbon footprint using a life cycle approach. And the fifth component, it's regarding to the development of very specific credit lines and warranties that will support this rapidly technology adoption and the transformation of these productive actors. This is mainly to support, for example, the different changes of machinery that the agro-industry will have to endeavor once they have enough agricultural organic waste to use in a fossil fuel substitution scenario. Okay, so this is by having this conceptualization and this political context, we faced that we had to find a way, to lower the uncertainty for this private sector and for the financial sector to understand and to bring them aboard for this unilateral NAMA. And we had to coordinate within the NAMA coordinating committee to see whether there was or not a good baseline or study, at least to bring in an order of magnitude of the different potential agricultural organic waste that would be available throughout the country, and which will also allow us to come up with a first tier of to answer the question on how feasible this was, but also to bring in at least a first tier of prioritization of the agricultural organic wastes that we're going to be considered for the activities and the components of this NAMA. So what we found is that for the especially for dry biomass, the scenario was a little bit more uncertain, since non-governmental agencies have been actually working in any specific project, at least to pilot the availability and the technical suitability for a specific crop. But for the wet biomass residues, we did have some extra support and extra information, specifically from the Costa Rica Electricity Institute biogas program, and since they have been identifying dozens of several projects and that have been designed for the usage of many different residues throughout the country. So what we found, given the pretty good and I'd rather say amazing good interaction and coordination of this NAMA, we have granted access and technical guidance to understand and use some of the last studies that mainly the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock have commissioned for a broader purpose, not for the NAMA, not specifically for the NAMA, but rather to understand in a more broader context the energetical potential of the main crops residues throughout the country, and there is where we have come up with the study developed by Oscar Cotto, which was called the Evaluation of Organic Agricultural Waste Generation in Costa Rica, which has mainly secondary sources based on the 2012 available data, but also from the UNDP commissioned study called Waste Agriculture Biomass for Energy Use, Conservation, and GHG Emission Reduction, which actually used the Oscar Cotto study as an input, mainly to develop a couple of fossil fuel substitution scenario, given this pool of agricultural organic waste generation. But also, we found some case-specific feasibility studies developed and financed by the GIZ for the use of dry biomass in different agri-business facilities in the regional areas of the country. Okay. And we are going to focus a little bit on how we used the first study I mentioned, the evaluation of organic agricultural waste generation, which, as I said, since this was like the very first approach the Ministry of Agriculture made to understand and prioritize the potential of different organic agricultural waste. It is very theoretical and limited to secondary sources provided by different governmental agency and provided by some other academical institutions in the country. So it's more or less a compendium of all the information that was available. And it also includes some elements of processes of technological conversion, aiming to provide different elements of discussion for decision makers. The organic agricultural waste that were included were 3 different residues from the coffee harvest and production, 4 different residues from sugar cane production, 2 different residues from pineapple, rice, citrus, bananas, palm, the different byproducts derived from the sawmills, and also to understand the potential of different livestock manners. What they made was a characterization of the residues analyzed, considering different factors to come up with an order of magnitude for all of them, both in terms of volume and energy. So they considered waste generation, moisture content, and the higher theoretical calorific value for each residue, and therefore obtaining a collection and evaluation of secondary sources, as I already mentioned. This is more or less to illustrate the different moisture content, the balance of mass as a ratio from the whole production mass for each residue, and the superior calorific power for each agricultural waste, and also for the livestock matters considered. And as a result, which were relevant for the NAMA design, we have that the total wet biomass generated for 2012 was about 27 million tons, out of which the agriculture and sawmill sector represents a little bit more than a half, and while the rest was for the different livestock waste that were considered. In terms of dry biomass and forestry sectors, you can see that 55% of the dry biomass was composed by agriculture and forestry, while 44% was composed by livestock matters. In terms of total primary energy potential, it was estimated at 86,487 terajoules, while agricultural and sawmill sector concentrate 54% of that total primary energy. So when we try to prioritize in terms of mass of and availability of these resources per crop, you can see the main biomass availability not necessarily is coherent to the pool of primary energy availability. As you can see in the first chart, the sugarcane residues has the higher dry biomass potential, while the pineapple has the wet biomass higher potential, as it is also for the and then in terms of primary energy potential, you can see that as it was expected to be, the sugarcane residues was by an important percentage higher than pineapple residues, followed by palm, banana, coffee, and rice. This is also the breakdown for each of the different agricultural organic waste that were studied, which are also coherent to the per crop scenario that we illustrated in the previous slide, mainly concentrated by the pineapple and sugarcane residues, and then followed by some palm organic waste. There is also
Alejandro, can I ask you to wrap up in the next 1 or 2 minutes, please?
Yes, for sure. I'm going to skip a couple of slides, and I'm just going to highlight here the application we made just to understand how this resource potential would be used in boilers substitution, fossil fueled boilers substitution scenario. We had the national boilers inventory from the Ministry of Health, and we used a 15% of technological change scenario, meaning that 15% of these boilers will be in a conservative scenario able to use this dry biomass for their thermal energy processes for self-consumption, and we have this different organic agricultural waste to energy coverage ratio that you can see in the far right column, just to understand how this biomass availability would actually cover this fossil fuel substitution scenario demand for biomass. And I'm going to close with the last slide. I'm not being able to. Okay. With the information gaps that, and let's say to be able to build up a gap, a map such as the one Anelia showed us. So we found that a preliminary organic agricultural waste prioritization have been done by choosing pineapple, rice, sugarcane, and livestock manners, but deeper analysis has to be done in order to assess residues potential in light of specific technologies that will be fostered through this component 2 of this NAMA proposal. There need to be done another study to find the resource availability per geographic region to understand also the logistic limitations. And there also has to be done a study to understand the GHG baseline, since the national GHG inventory accounting rules for this sector do not allow to determine the exact GHG contribution for each crop and for each residue, and also in order to build up the NAMA indicators that has to be developed for the MRV system. We found that there has to be an update of the National Stationary Combustion Facility and boilers, and we also need to foster the development of some scenarios to foresee what could happen when various are not an enabling scenario to go from self-consumption to selling power to the grid. There is already a tariff fixation methodology, but have yet not been implemented by any private agent. So I know I've been very fast through the last slides. I hope this presentation has been useful, maybe not in terms of the development of this resource potential study, but at least on how we managed to use it, the available studies, to at least reduce the uncertainty of such important programmatic effort as this NAMA. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Alejandro. Very dense presentation and very interesting and with a lot of relevance. And congratulations to the great work that you have done. What I want to do now is we have 3/4 of an hour left, is bring the other participants in. We have asked you to prepare very short statements of where your country stands in terms of existing assessments, what are some of the remaining data and information needs, and how have existing assessments, or that are currently being conducted, how have they or will they be used for political decision making? And 3 of you have opted for, we've given you an option to present some slides, and 3 countries have done so: Argentina, El Salvador, and Cuba. And I would like now, Phil, if we could jump through the first slides and ask Marina Solanas to present her slides. I'm going to have to impose a very strong time limit on you here. So I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes, and we're going to start with the 3 presentations that we have received and see, in case if there's others from those countries that are now presenting the slides, have anything to add. That's going to be next. And after that, we're going to turn to the countries that don't have slides. And then we do a last round of questions and suggestions, including for Alejandro, who unfortunately doesn't get a chance right now to answer questions. But please stay with us, Alejandro, if you can. And we'll see whether there's additional questions for you coming up now in this last segment. So with this, I want to turn it to Marina Solanas. Marina, your 5 minutes start now.
Great. Thank you very much, Alex, for this opportunity to share with you what is that we already found in terms of our feedstock for our co-digestion and cogeneration projects at wastewater treatment plants in Argentina, what is that we still need, and what are I'd like to go to the first slide, please. The second one. Alex? Oh, thank you. So, as I mentioned, we are focusing on wastewater treatment plants. I hope this is something that is also of interest of other members of the community. And I want to highlight here that we have found a lot of a huge lack of information on this topic. Where is that the plants are? What are the technologies that these plants use? Because we would like to focus only on those plants that already count on anaerobic digestion, that already have this investment made, so it's easier to develop a co-digestion and cogeneration project. We actually, within our association, we share the vision on biorefineries for wastewater treatment plants. It's not just that we want to produce biogas, but we see this as a first step. And we are actually focusing particularly on fats, oils, and grease as a co-digestion feedstock. We found that this is a very synergistic, that this feedstock particularly has great synergistic effects with the sludge. So we are trying to make this work where we already have digesters in place, as I mentioned. So what is that I found so far? There is a program called ProBarros, is the Program for Sustainable Management of Sludge at the Ministry of Development in Argentina, who are already making the survey to find what's the technologies that different plants use in Argentina, where are these plants located as well, and we are hoping to see this information by the end of this year. On the other side, there's there is a great map that I will show in the next slide that was developed by the Undersecretariat of Territorial Planning of Public Investment. And maybe here my colleagues from Argentina, from the program Biomass, can help me with some inputs also that I found in a wonderful study that they developed during a research on different digesters across the country, in which was in this research they included a couple of wastewater treatment plants, but I still need a couple more details on those plants and to know where is that they are located and how they are actually technically performing, if they are working well or what are their technical needs. Next slide, please. So, and in this slide, I just wanted to show you what is that we already have in terms of location of the plants. As I said, we have a lot of trouble finding appropriate georeferences for these plants, and this was the best thing we could find through the Undersecretariat of Territorial Planning. But unfortunately, we didn't find which plants were those that had already digesters in place. So this is something that is missing. Next slide, please. And we are hoping to find by the end of
Seems like you're cutting out. I can't hear you anymore. Can you check your microphone, please? And there's only a minute to go, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's.
Marina, you seem to be fading in and out, at least on my end. Phil, if you could give me a sign whether that's the same for you.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I don't know.
better now. Yes, get back.
Thank you. So this is what we would like to see. This is an example of a map of organics production in the state of Connecticut, where so the department worries that commercial establishments were generating a lot of food waste, for example, and from these inputs we can assess how much FOGs that we could be generating across the country. So this is something that we would love to see to find our co-digestion feedstock for our wastewater treatment plants. And in the next slide, we are actually explaining that our association doesn't actually make political decisions, but what we try to do is to influence the agenda of the local government, and we would like to propose a project, a particular project with one of the best candidates in terms of wastewater treatment plants that could provide with electricity or natural gas to the region, to the area where local communities would need this biomethane or this electricity, and make it successful through co-digestion of fats, salts, and grease. So, well, I hope I gave you a big picture of what is that we have, our needs, and what are our expectations in terms of decision making. I don't want to go into the details of this slide because I ran out of time, but I really appreciate your time, and I would love to receive your questions afterwards.
Thank you so very much. I want to see Federico Moyano from Pro Biomassa is another Argentinian participant in this exercise. Is there anything to add that you feel is really important in the case of Argentina to mention here? Federico, if you have a mic and there's anything you want to add, please do so now. I'm going to wait for a few seconds to see whether that's the case.
Hey, hi, I'm Federico. No, well, I don't know if you received my presentation. I sent a few slides yesterday. I don't know if you want me to comment on those slides, or if you want just a comment on the presentation that Marina made. What would you like me to do?
Let's see, Phil, if you could jump in here, please, and let us know whether you've received it and included it in the presentation here. Otherwise, we're going to share it after today's presentation. We're going to make sure that everybody gets it, and we're going to review it on the organizer side very carefully to make sure that we receive input from you, Federico. I'm sorry if.
Okay, no problem. I have
it right here, guys.
Okay.
All right. So why don't we, in this case, give you, a few minutes to run through those slides before we move on to the next country. And Federico, sorry for putting you on the spot here to improvise, but maybe you can be very time aware and see that you add to it just what hasn't been mentioned in the previous presentation already. Thank you very much, Federico. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just the first thing is to apologize because I didn't have time to translate my presentation into Spanish, into English. Sorry. Could you move to the following slide? Yeah, the idea of this short presentation is to show you the potential that has been the biomass potential that has been analyzed already by the country. The original study the country carried out was performed by the national government in association with FAO, and the program was called Wisdom. Wisdom is a methodology developed by the University of Mexico, and it stands for Mutual Integrated Supply-Demand Overview Mapping. It's basically a tool that helps you to define what's the balance of biomass energy that you could have in your country or in a specific region. During that initial study performed in 2009, it was established that the that the potential of biomass resources or availability was really very, very large. By that time, in that study, the result was that Argentina could generate or produce at least 140 million tons of biomass residues or biomass resources to produce energy, and that would be equivalent to about 37,000 kilotons of oil equivalent. Compared to what has been used in 2014, this is like 6 times higher to what we are currently using. In these three graphs here in this slide, you can see the very reduced participation that the biomass energy is having in the current energy system of Argentina. When we analyze the electricity sector, we see that only 2% of the electricity is generated by renewable sources, and within the renewable sources, only 6% comes from biomass. So the conclusion is that the potential is very, very large, but the current use of the biomass resources are very, very reduced. Is very reduced. The next slide, please. This is after this initial program, a project called Wisdom. The Argentine government, together again with FAO, developed a new program called Biomass, the one I'm working for. And this program decided within its activities decided to update the information that was produced in 2009 and be more specific regarding the different regions and specific and provinces. So this is going on right now. We are developing specific wisdom for every province, in some cases for every region, smaller region where most of the residues are being generated. The new very conservative estimation of biomass residues availability has been identified last year, and it resulted in a round number of about 14 million tons of biomass that are commercially viable and physically accessible to be used right now, and this would give the potential to generate or to install a capacity of at least 1,800 megawatts of installed capacity to generate electricity. So this is again a very conservative approach, considering only 5% of the wood of the forest sustainable, of the native forest sustainable production, and considering most of the primary direct and indirect residues that are not being used right now. All the residues that are being left in the ground, on the ground. Next slide, please. This is just since I don't have much time, I will skip this slide and go for the next one, please. This is just to show you an example of how this methodology is developed in one of the provinces of Argentina. This is the province of Tucumán. this methodology uses or makes an analysis in two different modules. One is the supply module, and the other is the demand module. Within the supply module, it subdivides it into type of supplies, the direct supply and indirect supply. Click on the next. Okay. So during the assessment of the direct biomass supply, different sources are analyzed, and not only the whole availability, but also it is analyzed the physical and legal availability of these resources. So you end up having a map with the showing where the real biomass is available. Click on the next. Click again, please. And this.
Fernando, could I ask you to come to an end relatively soon, because we want to still hear from the other countries?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. This was just an. Yeah, it was just to show you an example of how this wisdom methodology is used in every province. But we can move on, and if somebody wants to have this more details, I could give them directly. So I finish here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been great, and we're going to make sure we include it in today's presentation, share it with all members, those who have been able to join today's call, as well as those who had something in the way of attending it. But thank you so much, both Marina and Federico, for preparing short presentations, and we definitely added to the materials. So we've heard from Costa Rica and we've heard from Argentina. Could I ask Phil to pull up the slides that Cesar Augusto Granados Jimenez has prepared on the situation in El Salvador? Cesar, please, 5 minutes on the clock. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone.
Cesar? Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Go ahead. We hear you.
Okay. Here with me is Edwin Alvarado. We are from El Salvador, from Consejo Nacional de Energía. Please, next slide. For all to know what is Consejo Nacional de Energía, I want to introduce ourselves. Like, is the rector and normative authority in terms of the energy policy. It has the attribution to establish the energy policy and the strategies that promote the efficient development of the electricity sector. Our function is to make all the national energy policy with the principles like national energy policy is part of the sustainable development which satisfies the present needs without compromising the resources for future generation. And the energy policy is a middle and long-term effort that must be jointly developed by the government and private investors. We can promote and make a lot of action. We have the support of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. In 2009, we developed the National Energy Policy of El Salvador, and as we can know, the master plan that we can find all the potential of a lot of different resources to produce energy and to change our electric generation. That in fact, we have about 50% of renewable generation. Next slide, please. Well, in this master plan, we have a lot of, we identify a lot of potential, but in the most important was biomass and biogas. For biomass, we have a lot of potential for sugarcane. The coffee house and rice house has been examined. For example, for sugarcane, biomass power generation systems were already introduced in some sugarcane factories in El Salvador. There are a lot of sugarcane factories that are interconnected with the national power grid, and they generate power to the national power grid. In fact, as you can see, they have a lot of presence, like 226 megawatts of production. And for biogas, we have identified a lot of landfill power plants. The most important is Nejapa in San Salvador, that it has 6.3 megawatts of capacity. Next slide, please. And how we promote this kind of technology? We already made a bidding process in 2013 that we promote to this bidding process for long-term contracts to have developed this kind of technologies. In fact, for this bidding process, there were two plants that they were participate and won this bidding process. And for the next years, we hope we can promote another bidding process, because in our country the most potential are in our case for private development. For a government development, we only have just one just one NAMA, but it's not focused in biogas. As you can see, we have a lot of potential, and we hope that in the future years we can improve our capacity to avoid the fuel generation. Next slide. Well, that's the resume. I hope that it was clear. For any questions, you can go to our website. We have there a lot of materials, like the master plan, our politics, and we have developed also maps with the position of these projects that are already working.
Thank you very much, Cesar Augusto. This is a very interesting and very precise and almost on time. So this is great. I thank you very much for it, and we're going to share your material with the other participants. We had another prepared statement or a couple of slides from Alfredo Curbello from Cuba, who seems to have just lost the conversation. So we're going to skip this for now and see whether he's coming back online. If not, then we share the information with you in terms of the slides, and hopefully he gets a chance to engage in the discussion again in future sessions. I want to move on just by alphabetical order to the next one in line, without some slides, but a very active participant in earlier sessions is Betsy Bandy. Betsy, you seem to have microphone problems in the beginning of the session. I hope you have fixed them. It would be great if you give us a brief insight in the situation Jamaica is in.
Alexander? Alex.
Yes, Betsy. Hi, we hear you.
No, this is Nick.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I think Betsy. Well, I'll just give an overview on behalf of Betsy.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, a lot of what Jamaica is doing is guided by our energy policy, which was promulgated in 2009, where we are looking to improve the renewable energy input into the overall energy portfolio of the country by about 20% by 2030. Now, from the bioenergy perspective, unfortunately, bioenergy has not been a significant contributor to the amount of energy that has been inputted so far. However, we do have a lot of potential for bioenergy. Of course, Jamaica is referred to as the land of wood and water, but the wood component has not been, brought to the fore. From a bioenergy perspective, an assessment was done in 2012 through to 2015, primarily looking at charcoal and firewood, which indicated that we have approximately 2.2 million tons of biomass from charcoal and firewood. Also, our sugar sector, we produce about 1 million tons of sugarcane on an annual basis, which has a lot of potential for biomass. There has only been one sugar plant that has indicated some potential of exporting to the grid, and it was actually granted a license, I believe, sometime earlier this year to export to the grid. But most of the sugar factories do self-generate. Also, the PCJ in, I believe, 2012 had put in a bid to put on about 30 megawatt of electricity to the grid based on biomass. Unfortunately, that bid was not selected because it was indicated that there were some technical challenges with the technology and also the supply of the biomass, the feedstock. At the time, we were looking at utilizing vetiver grass as a feedstock and supplemented by fuel wood, Lucinia, at the time. So there are a number of challenges that we believe that exist as it relates to getting biomass into the energy mix from a bioelectricity perspective. We also think that the whole issue of how biomass is treated locally in terms of competitiveness with the other renewable energy should be looked at, because biomass is unique, and we believe that if bids are put out, for energy from electricity, biomass needs its own space to compete, and should not necessarily be competing against solar and wind and hydro and so on because of the uniqueness of biomass. So, in a nutshell, I would say that there is good potential for biomass locally. But from the experiences of countries such as Costa Rica, and Argentina and the other countries pushing ahead, with biomass, primarily from the biogas point of view, which is something that is piquing my interest because we have not really done a lot in terms of biogas, especially on a commercial scale, with combined with combustion engines, so that is something that I believe that we can also take advantage of, given that we have a large sewage treatment facility that is centralized, and also there is need to assess the other agricultural waste that we do generate. We have somewhat of a large coffee industry and banana industry that generate a significant amount of agro waste. So that assessment needs to be done so that we can totally determine what our biomass potential are. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
This was perfect. This was so exactly on time. I wish I could always be so short. Thank you so much. Great insight. Just want to make sure that I have the presenter right. So this was Nicanor, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much, Nicanor. Thanks for presenting this. We have one more country now still on the line with us, and that's Colombia. Hector Hernando Herrera Flores from the Mining and Energy Planning Unit. Are you still with us? Are you prepared to share a few thoughts about the situation in Colombia? If so, now is your chance. Hello, Hector? You're unmuted in case you have a microphone and are not just in listening mode. This is your opportunity. I'm going to wait a few more seconds. And if not, then we're going to wrap up. 10 minutes to go. Hector? Seems like you're not able to share that situation. Anyways, anybody who wants to share more information about their country is, of course, able to do so with the rest of the community, either through using the LinkedIn platform that we have established or using the Dropbox folders, where some of our team members have already assembled information regarding your country, policies that they have found, analysis that they have found, and but this is, I'm pretty sure, by no way complete. So please look up the Dropbox folders. Make sure that Phil gives you access to it and see what we have assembled for your countries and add to it. And that might well include slides that you've prepared but have been able to show at this session today or at other events. There's a couple of questions that came up during the session today for the speakers. Ignacio Figoli asked whether there's any experience in agroforestry, alley cropping, switchgrass with Sinus clear. I think we're going to forward those questions to the experts, and we'll get them in touch with you. And to the extent that we believe it's exciting for the group as a whole, we're going to share it with everybody else, what our speakers have responded. So I want to maybe stop here and before we wrap up, and I can do the wrap up in really 3 minutes. So that gives us another 3-4 minutes for remaining comments or questions. Is there anything that you would like to raise, anything that you would like to mention now before I wrap up the session? Just unmute your microphone. You have the power to do it, and just raise your voice.
Yeah, Alex, this is Marina. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Marina.
Yeah, I would like to know if there's any other members interested in co-digestion and co-generation at wastewater treatment plants, or is it just the case of Asociación Sustentar?
Anybody who wants to respond to this? Any country that is on this call that has a special interest? Of course, we can forward your question to the broader group, Marina. We have lost the three-hour session, and we have very high-level folks involved in this. Not everybody was able to attend the whole session, and we had some who couldn't make today's session, so I'm happy to forward that question to others. But for those on the call, anybody who wants to respond to Marina's question?
Hello?
Yes, please.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Betsy Bandy from Jamaica.
Hi, Betsy.
Hi, how are you? Her question it was about interest in wastewater and cogeneration for bioelectricity.
Correct.
Right. From Jamaica's perspective, I believe that we would be interested in something like that. And if you look back at, if you remember in Niconor's presentation, he spoke of cogeneration in the sugarcane industry. And we have had several challenges, although we did facilitatory studies to assist them, but we still have challenges just to get them to be self-generating before going to the grid. And our wastewater treatment plant, we have had discussions for utilizing them to produce energy, and also our solid waste we're in the process of looking at solid waste for bioelectricity. So yes, we'll be interested in something like that.
That's good. So I'm happy to see that we could already make some connections here between the countries that have a specific technology interest. And anybody who wants to continue this conversation specifically on cogeneration and also on wastewater treatment, those were the two technologies being brought up here.
Or maybe talking about biorefineries in a more broad way, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Biorefineries. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Any other final comments or suggestions for the following sessions? I want to mention that feedback from you is really important to us. We don't want to run this as sort of a an exercise that's mostly driven by us. We wrapped our heads around this and try to figure out what's most helpful for the group. But we really have the utmost flexibility in as we move forward. So since time is running short now, I'd ask you to, if you have suggestions for what we can do better, if you have suggestions for the following sessions, please just continue the conversation with us. It's really helpful for us to fine-tune what we're doing together here as a community. Could I just then ask Phil to pull up the final slides? I will be super short. Some of it you have already seen. We just wanted to mention again, there are community resources that you can approach both to communicate your situation, your country, the requests you have, as well as seeing what others are doing and pulling information from it. So one is the LinkedIn group. If you haven't become a member of it yet, please do so. I think we have about 12 countries as it stands represented there. As I mentioned before, we don't want to be more countries, but we want those who are involved with us to be more active, so that you and us, we get the most out of it in between the time now and the end of September. So it's just the couple of months that we have to make this the most productive process. Secondly, there's a Dropbox folder, as I mentioned. Please make sure to be in touch with Phil Killeen for getting access there. Next slide. These are the upcoming sessions. We're going to share all slides with you and the other participants who haven't been able to be with us today. I mentioned the sessions before, so I'm not going through them in detail anymore. But you will find the dates on here when the sessions are scheduled for. So I'm really asking you to mark those on your calendars. I'm sure your calendars fill up quickly. You have a tight schedule, so the earlier you can block those dates, hopefully the more likely it is that you will be able to join us. The next session is, I can just say a word about this, is on cost and benefits of alternate energy scenarios. It's on what bioelectricity technologies, in a very simple term, cost and what they can provide. And we're currently still designing the session and identifying speakers. If you have good suggestions in terms of what the structure could be, what good speakers could be, please let us know. We're also going to send you again 3 questions, and if you have 3 slides that you want to present, then please prepare them as assignments, so to speak, or homework. And maybe the next time we're going to start with you, and we're going to start with the situation in your country as it relates to cost and benefits analysis of bioelectricity, and give you a little bit more time to get engaged with us at the very beginning of the session and turn it all around and then bring in some experts that answer your questions or that show specific tools. Next slide, please. Might be the thank you slide. Yes, it is. Wonderful. With 2 minutes to go still, and I apologize for rushing through the last slides and not giving Alejandro more of a chance to answer questions. But we're going to leave the slide on for the last couple of minutes. So you, by now, I'm sure, have my contact as well as Ana Maria Macanos, who couldn't be with us today. But we'll leave the next session coming up. Also, I want to really thank the Secretariat and basically the day-to-day managers of this, Phil Killeen at the World Watch Institute, and Alejandra Granados, who is the coordinator of the Let's Lack platform. Thank you guys so much for investing really a lot of time in making this all happen. And last but definitely not least, I should have started with this. I want to thank Anelia Milbrandt from NREL and Alejandro Roblero from CIMS. You find their email addresses on here. Please contact them with any questions you have. If you want to do the work that they have done in their home countries, I'm sure they would be excited to discuss this. With this, right to the point of the full hour, I'm going to end today's session. I thank you all for attending very, very much. I'm looking forward to our next session already. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, and everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Looking forward for the next session.